If you're just joining us, we are now wrapping up the Detecting Web DDoS Attacks, which is inside of the Web Security Monitoring module of the SOC Level 1 pathway of TryHackMe, and this is in the SOC Level 1 playlist of this channel. So far we've talked about the difference between DOS and DDoS attacks. We've talked about the motives of the attackers, how to detect these things via logs manually, and how to use a tool like Splunk to actually do the investigation for it. So now we just need to talk about how to defend against these types of attacks. And a DDoS attack is actually interestingly unique because it's coming from, let's say, 1,000 different IP addresses or 50 or 100 or whatever. So it's not as simple as to just block an IP address and then they won't be able to send you malicious traffic anymore. So defenders have various tools and methods to keep systems resilient, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So on the application level, there's the secure development practices. So a secure site starts with secure code. So in a previous section, in case you're watching these one by one, I think it was like at the very beginning when I was just talking about the DDoS attacks themselves, where I actually showed you an example of the secure coding mechanism. So if we go down here and try to find an answer, so this would be an answer, right? It's incorrect, and then it's going to give me incorrect. So let's wait for that real quick. And then what I'm going to do immediately after is that, like, if this is incorrect, then and I submit it immediately again, then it'll say, hey, you're going too fast. And that's part of the secure coding of the TryHackMe website. They did it so that people can't submit questions or responses quickly one after another, which will then overload their servers. So that's secure coding, right? Search fields and forms, I just submitted something into a form and then you saw me do it immediately after. It has to validate input so that it can't be abused. Think of a form like a librarian who looks up books on request. If a librarian has clear rules, like only search for titles under 50 characters, it can respond quickly. Without rules in place, someone could ask the librarian to search for an overly long or strange title with special characters, which slows them down and delays everyone else's requests. In the same way, web applications need input validation to stop attackers from submitting specialized queries aimed at overloading the system. Challenges with this is that the only way to stop automated traffic is to require a challenge before granting access. So this could be a CAPTCHA form, for example, where the user solves a puzzle like clicking images or checking a box. For humans, it's a small step, but for bots, it can block or slow down an attack completely. Websites can also use JavaScript challenges, which runs quietly in the background, to confirm if a visitor is a real user or an automated traffic. And legit users don't usually notice them, but automated tools and botnets often fail, make these challenges an effective filter. So this is what we see right here. I am not a robot. I see this all the time. TryHackMe does it whenever I try to log in. That's like regular, and it's not that big of a deal, right? There's the ones where the pictures pop up and they're like, select all fire hydrants. And then you select one of those, something along those lines. So these are all just application level defenses that can actually help us. Then we have the network level defenses and infrastructure defenses. So the content delivery network is really important. So there is the main server, and then there's the content delivery network, which is all of the proxy servers that reside on the edge. So let's actually see if there's an image here that shows it to us. It does not. So let's see if we can find a content delivery network example real quick. I think there wasn't a CDN example. So if we do that, there we go. Okay, so this is not bad. So if we look at this, there will be a bunch of different ones. So this is the main one. Let's look at this thing. So if we open this in a new tab, we should be able to kind of zoom in here. So it says the origin server is the red one. So this is the origin server. The edge server are all these blue ones, right? And then we can see the users trying to connect to the edge servers, and then the green line is the connection between the edge servers trying to connect to the main server. So everything apart from this main server is considered an edge server, and everything that is the edge server is the content delivery network. So it's basically what's outside of that main server that's kind of hopefully guiding and blocking traffic. So the CDN helps manage server load by catching and serving content from edge servers closest to the users. This reduces latency and allows the origin server to handle only a fraction of the requests, while the CDN server is the majority. As a result, the CDNs take on much of the burden of the mitigation of the DDoS attack, and they also provide load balancing to distribute traffic across servers, ensuring no single server is overloaded and rerouting requests if one becomes unavailable. So here's an example of a 16 terabyte DDoS attack that's displayed in Cloudflare. And so total bandwidth over a 30-day period, which shows the entire volume over the last 30 days. If the site normally sees a few hundred gigabytes a month, suddenly seeing 16 terabytes indicates something is not normal. Total cache bandwidth by CDN edge servers represents how much traffic was successfully delivered by the CDN edge servers. Nearly all the bandwidth being cached indicates that Cloudflare absorbed the attack traffic before it could overwhelm. And traffic spike from DDoS is the graph in the signature of the DDoS attack without its CDN. So this is what we see right here. So we have total bandwidth over the last 30 days, the cached bandwidth, which is pretty much the same thing, same exact number, and an uncached bandwidth 3.7 gigabytes, which is what we see right here. So cached 1.09, cached, so if we go down here, we'll see this, right? So from this 1 day period right here, from 3 a.m. to 3 a.m., we see that 1.09 gigabytes was uncached, 4.55 was cached, total being the 4.55. So again, just kind of reviewing this data, right? So the total bandwidth over 30 days is the entire traffic volume. Total cached bandwidth represents how much was successfully delivered to the edge servers. And then the spike from a DDoS is the graph that's the signature of the DDoS attack, which is what we see right here, right? So both of these are normal. These are like total bandwidth, the cache bandwidth, which is what went through the content delivery network edge servers. And then through these 30 days, there's this giant spike that we see right here that ends up being the portion of the traffic that I would assume is the uncached portion because it's the one that was through the DDoS attack. So beyond absorbing the traffic, CDNs also provide analysts with powerful visibility, including helpful visuals and diagnostics. So it lets you quickly break down requests by geolocation, volume, source patterns, distinguish malicious traffic. So this is the tryhackme.thm example here, where we can see, you know, the darker it is, I think the more traffic probably. And as we can see right here, Indonesia, which is down here, I believe. I might be geographically challenged, so I'm not sure. But it seems to have the bulk of the traffic. And then the Philippines was like a third of what happened with, less than a third of what happened in Indonesia. So these are some of the powers of the CDN that's available to people who, or to businesses who have these like giant networks, that they have to have these edge servers that will provide, protect and make sure that their central servers are not affected. There's the web application firewall, which typically comes with the CDN to shield the customer's server. They inspect incoming traffic and either allow, challenge, or block requests. They work off of rules because it's a firewall. Modern firewalls are already very good at mitigating DDoS attacks because they know what to look out for. Custom rules can also be developed to assist in defending. For example, you might implement rate limiting firewall rules that limits requests to the login to 5 per minute. If the originating IP address gets more than 5 times, it could be blocked from making future requests. That's really, really good. It's like a very powerful resource that we can have. So the DOS protection web application firewall rule. So if the path equals login and the requests are greater than 5 minutes, block it. That's a very powerful rule that you can put in your firewall. And this is a great defense mechanism to make sure that certain pages that are the most resource intensive pages are really monitored. And if anything happens more than 5 per minute, I mean, we saw attacks that were taking 5 per second, right? So obviously if it's more than 5 per second, then it's going to get blocked. And that would block the entire IP address, and that would make it a little bit easier for the defensive team to stop it. And then we have large scale mitigation for modern defense that can block denial of service and leverage the vast distribution infrastructure to absorb and balance large volumes of traffic. So in 2023, the Google company mitigated a large-scale DDoS attack that peaked at 398 million requests per second. That is insane. 398 million requests per second. That's crazy. Cloudflare claims to have mitigated the largest DDoS ever, which peaked at 11.5 terabytes per second and lasted 35 seconds. These examples demonstrate how providers use global networks and traffic filtering. That's insane, bro. That's such a massive amount of attacks. Like, how did that even happen? That's crazy. All right, so bypassing security measures. So while CDNs, caching, and firewalls provide strong protection, attackers often attempt to bypass them. One technique is appending random query parameters. Your CDN might serve a cached URL at products, but if an attacker appends the query with a random string like products, and then you have this string at the end right here, the CDN cannot serve the cache page, and the origin server is forced to respond. Similarly, changing user agents, spoofing referrer pages, or launching requests from diverse geographic regions can also help attackers evade the firewall filtering rules. So these are just some ways. And then this is, again, another one of those things that from the defensive perspective, if we know what attackers are going to try to do to bypass our defenses, we can then try to also create newer rules to try to mitigate against these types of attack strategies. So what type of security challenge blocks bots? By asking questions. That would be caching. The answer you provided might not be in English. What are you talking about? Oh, CAPTCHA. I'm sorry, CAPTCHA. There you go. Which CDN feature spreads traffic across multiple servers to prevent content overload and across multiple servers to prevent overload? So CDN, let's go over here. It's not the web application firewall.